Namaste, great souls, great soul, dear friend. We want to celebrate this evening the birth of the great Jnanavatar, avatar of wisdom, Sri Yukteswar. We all know that this is really in this moment that the world, and maybe even your personal world, needs a lot of wisdom. There are so many waves around, so many different types of energies, conflicts, tension. Nobody knows where we're going, what's happening. And each one of us is called to live ever more according to his real wisdom. Sri Yukteswar really incarnates this wisdom, true wisdom. There will be some cosmic wisdom that he has lived and taught, but also very practical type of wisdom, grounded with a life of introspection. If you want to take a pen and paper that could help, you could use that during this hour. And so let us invoke together Sri Yukteswar now in prayer. Bring your hands to your heart. Think of this lion of wisdom, the lion of Bengali, as Yogananda called him. And let's pray together. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God, great masters, beloved Sri Yukteswar, fill my consciousness, guide my life, help me to express your wisdom with every act of mine, action. Help me to be guided always by a true wisdom. Bless me, impregnate me with your wisdom this evening especially, and during these days, coming days. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So let us now evoke his presence in our hearts, singing.
Jai Guru Jai, vittoria al Guru, vittoria alla saggezza.
Victory to wisdom.
Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai. Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai, Jai Guru Jai, Guru Jai, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai. Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai Guru Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri Jai Guru Jai. Sediamoci una. We will now change language.
Ora cambiamo lingua. Un momento di pazienza. We will change language now. Ora
what the disciples of Sri Yukteswar felt when they were sitting at his feet. Yogananda talks about this instant impact that the vibrations of his master had on him. When he came to the master inwardly disturbed, sitting with him, immediately calmness and peace radiated on him. And he knew all the time that he was sitting in front of a living embodiment of God. God, through this master, talked to him. So close your eyes, feel yourself in India, in the ashram of Sri Yukteswar, sit in his presence, and just try to feel for a moment what kind of energy is coming to you. And try to come to Sri Yukteswar with your momentary life, with your problems at the moment, with your inner struggle and growth, and ask inwardly, how should I behave? Which direction is correct for me? What is wisdom in this moment for me? And just feel the energy coming and answering your question. What do you want from me? What is wisdom-guided action in my life right now? And just for 1 or 2 minutes, meditate on that presence of Sri Yukteswar right at your side, and his energy coming to you, blessing you, and guiding your life and your next steps in life. Make sure you don't move the body just for 1 or 2 minutes, because you can. Sri Yukteswar was very disciplinarian. You couldn't move the body. Just sit straight and open to his big blessing. Be ready also to be scolded and told that you are quite wrong with certain things. Just as Sri Yukteswar told Yogananda, ready to be educated. And in that final moment, minute of meditation, open your heart even more and feel the blessing even more of Sri Yukteswar. And now again we will switch language. Just a little moment.
Good evening, everyone. Let's stay in this space of connection, inner connection with Sri Yukteswar. This moment, in some way, I can see him in front of me, this man who represents the archetype of the father, the archetype of the sage, the paternal figure, his look in his eyes. His disciple said it was always in Shambhavi Mudra, this look that gazes into the infinite, that always sees truth, that was therefore immobile in divine consciousness. And with this gaze, he looks at you. He sees everything that is in you. He can see your good qualities, your bad qualities, what is not anchored in truth, but there is no judgment. There is only help there. Inwardly, help for your freedom. This great man who was born in 1855 in West Bengal, at the moment when the British Empire was really beginning to take full control of the Indian subcontinent. It was also in Calcutta the central point where the two hemispheres, West and East, came together in union as the capital of the empire, the British Empire. So it was a point where these two cultures, East and West, were coming together, were melting, merging. The Western practicality, the organization, the discipline, and the deep spirituality of the East, the Orient. And Sri Yukteswar represented the union of these two principles. In his ashram, in fact, were one of the few ashrams where there were chairs. He would teach his students to march in unison. He was very strict also in practical details, very pragmatic, And he would always find practical solutions for even small problems. At the same time, he was anchored in this sat, as he called it, in this deep truth, in this absolute consciousness. Even as a child, he said school was just superficial. It didn't interest. He lost interest after a while in the school. He didn't feel school was taking him to truth. And so inwardly, he was trying to understand nature. He would study a lot. He would study homeopathy. He studied the French language. He was interested in all the subjects also in the world. And in his heart, he was looking for absolute truth. And this period of 1880 or 1885, he found Kriya Yoga through Lahiri Mahasaya. Actually, Kriya Yoga was then also beginning to spread in Serampore in West Bengali. And so he, through a common friend, he heard about this great master Lahiri, and he went to see Lahiri Mahasaya. This must have been in 1884, if I'm not mistaken. And Sri Yukteswar was not a man of many words. He was very silent, very inward. He was a strong man. He was like a lion. At the same time, however, he didn't socialize much. He was just sitting in the back. And there were different throngs of disciples, rows of disciples. And he was sitting there in the back in deep meditation. And only when the other disciples left, he came forward and knelt before the master and asked him for spiritual counsel. And then he received Kriya Yoga initiation, and very soon, under the guidance of the great master Lahiri, he realized full realization of cosmic consciousness and of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. He came, as we know, not for himself. He was already free. Lahiri Mahasaya said it didn't take him long. It was just a matter of reawakening a truth that was already fully alive in Sri Yukteswar. I want to add also that Sri Yukteswar then was married, but his wife unfortunately died very young. And his daughter also, he had one daughter, died very young. So his life somehow freed him of change and attachments of family life, and he could dedicate himself fully, all his energy, to the spiritual search, to become ready for his great task. Let's say that the first important moment that maybe many of you know, if you have read the autobiography of a yogi, happens in 1894 at a big, great Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, when he's there walking amidst the many sadhus that were there, and mentally he was sort of critical about them. He said, really, these sadhus, they behave more like beggars. They don't seem to be very elevated spiritually, and they are using religion to be lazy. And so he was wondering if the scientists in the West, the practical men from the West, if they were doing a better service to humanity with their research, with their findings, their modern inventions, if they were serving humanity better. At that moment, when he has that thought, a brahmachari, a monk, taps on his shoulder and says, "Listen, sir, an ancient master, yogi, is calling you. Please come with me." And he followed this brahmachari, this young monk, and he comes there in a little ashram where a young man was seated, very luminous figure. He was surrounded by a small circle of disciples, And immediately he could perceive this aura around him, this aura of light, and he bowed in front of him. And this young yogi then calls him Swami. He says, "I'm not a Swami," he says, "I'm not a Swami." And with lots of authority, strength, this young yogi then says, "Well, if those to whom I am be divinely guided to call him Swami, he will be a Swami." So at that moment, his name became Swami Sri Yukteswar. His original name was Priyanath Karar. During this meeting, which, as we know, it's described in the biography of Yogi, this is Babaji, this young, eternal, ancient master Mahavatar Babaji, gave him in that meeting a task. He said, "I see that your heart, that you feel for both East and West. Why not write a book that demonstrates the union between all religions, but especially between the Bible and the Vedas of the ancient India, So we know in the autobiography of Yogi that after this encounter, this transformative meeting with Babaji, he goes back to his house in Serampore, outside Calcutta, and in just a few months he wrote this little booklet, this jewel, which is named The Holy Science, Kaivalya Darshanam, as it is also named, The Vision of Eternity, which was the original name. And in this book that I have been trying to understand for about 30 years, lately I've even given seminars about it, is unbelievable. I read it, I reread it, I meditate on it, but everything, the whole evolution of the soul is in it. In just few essential words that demonstrated with a complete clarity, it is a jewel of all scriptures of mankind. And I do believe that in 100 or 200 years, the Vedas will continue, and it will be the Veda of the Upanishad of Swami Sri Yukteswar, the Upanishad of Swami Kriyananda, of the Yogananda, etc. It will continue. That's what I feel, an ancient culture of wisdom that will be transmitted from master to disciple, from master to disciple. Swami Sri Yukteswar had an important task to write this little booklet to take away, to eliminate all the superstitiousness, the superficial beliefs that were not really necessary, to free them to free this shining jewel called Sanatana Dharma, this deeper vision of eternity. In this book, he also makes a very important step, which will be understood, I think, only in hundreds of years, which is where he explains the yugas. He puts them in order again, in the right order, the eras of mankind. The understanding of the evolution of man on earth, the evolution of the period, the eras, cosmic eras, and how the soul evolves in these cycles, these yugas, as they are called, which is very important to understand the time on earth, the period we are living in now, and the evolution of man. In fact, he declared in 1899 that man was now entered in Dwapara Yuga proper, the age of energy. You know, in India, they still believe that we are still in the dark age of Kali Yuga that will still go on for another 300,000 years. There are people in India who believe that. There are conflicting opinions. Sri Yukteswar, however, said, we have entered full Dwapara Yuga in 1899. And when that happened, he, with a group of his disciples, made a round in the center of Serampore. They were celebrating this we've entered Dwapara Yuga, and people there, local people there, were throwing stones at them because they at that time were not able to believe. They considered blasphemous. It was still a very orthodox period religiously. It was very difficult for Sri Yukteswar because he was not a Brahmin, he was a Kshatriya. From the caste of the Kshatriya, belonged to the caste of the warriors. It was strange, therefore, that he even gave initiation to people from the Brahmin caste, and this was not looked at favorably in that period. It was not important for him, of course. Another important task for him was that he also recalculated astrology. He created a yogic type of astrology, indicating certain errors that had crept into the astrological calculations, and it was important to understand these so that people could live more harmoniously in harmony with the stars. But his most important task, as you all know, and as has always been announced by Babaji himself, who said, "I will send you a disciple that will be the emissary for this tradition of Kriya Yoga for the West, and you must prepare this disciple." So, in fact, in 1910, you know the story from the autobiography of a yogi, this happened, this encounter happened, this symbolic, beautiful moment happened of the young Mukunda. Later his name was Paramahansa Yogananda, who was a student in a school of Varanasi, who feels in the morning meditation, he hears the Divine Mother's voice saying, "Today you will meet your master." And his whole life, young life, he had been looking for his guru. Sometimes he would see in his dreams this face, this leonine face with the long beard, looked like a lion, strong. And on this day, when he was walking through the little streets of Varanasi, he saw this Swami in the end of a road, a little road, and he thought, that must be him. No, you're imagining things. And he moves on, and he tries to walk away from that figure, but he doesn't manage to. He feels like a great weight in his feet, and he feels the strong attraction, and so he runs to his guru and bows to him, and this moment is so it's like two great souls who meet again. And they had been separated for time, and now they meet again after a period of separation, and they recognize each other immediately in this great divine love. Unbelievably beautiful. And so every soul is what every soul would desire deep in his heart, that moment when you meet your own Savior, your own and the rest is history in the autobiography of a yogi. Sri Yukteswar prepares Yogananda to prepare a spiritual revolution in the world, the whole world. In 1920, Yogananda, with that vision, has this vision where he sees Americans in the West, and he feels called to the West. He goes to Sri Yukteswar, he says, ask for Sri Yukteswar's blessing, and Sri Yukteswar says, "It's now or never, go." And from that moment on, this great revolution, spiritual revolution, begins in the West. with the arrival of Paramahansa Yogananda in the United States. Swami Sri Yukteswar had little, just had a few, he had a lot, it was an important task inwardly, but preparing Yogananda was his main task. He had a few other disciples that he had to free, but as we know, he also said, now I have finished with this planet. He had reincarnated, and then he reincarnated on an astral planet named 𝗕𝗜𝗥𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗬, where only people from this plane who had found 𝗕𝗜𝗥𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗬 samadhi on this plane could go, who were already on a very high spiritual level. Only those people could live on that astral sun plane, where he now helps souls to become free from the last veil of astral karma and go to the causal world. Unbelievable, because these high expectations, he said, my lofty standards are more adapted to this planet. In the earth, we're a little bit behind compared to 𝗕𝗜𝗥𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗬. Unbelievable. But we know in our hearts that Swami Sri Yukteswar, the way he speaks about autobiography of a yogi, giving light, in union in the eternal present, you can manifest. This is possible. And in the infinite spirit, in this unimaginable consciousness, he is omnipresent. He can come now, immediately, in our sphere of understanding and perception. So today then, in whatever moment, especially when we need to understand, like Jai said before, what is true and what is not true, as we need this wisdom, let's invoke these avatars, this incarnation of wisdom, and then the mists, the fogs of delusion will disappear. Jai Gurus, Jai Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. So let's invoke him now with all our hearts.
Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Sri Yukteswar, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Sri Yukteswar, 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 Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Sri Yukteswar, 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 Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Sri Yukteswar, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Sri Yukteswaro. Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri, Sri Yukteswaro.
Cambiamo lingua.
So Sri Yukteswar was the Jnanavatar of wisdom, avatar of wisdom. He is very known for the cosmic vision of things, but then he went down to each person. And what was very important is self-analysis, introspection, and working on yourself, learning to behave. And we will read just 4 of his quotes, and we will analyze ourselves a little bit. You can just do it mentally if you want, or if you have a little pencil and paper handy, just write it down. The first quote: "The darkness of Maya is silently approaching. Let us hie homeward within." And now ask yourself, in this moment of my life, do I hie homeward within? Ask yourself, am I daily trying to see the divine light behind the darkness of Maya? Ask yourself, am I caught by the darkness which is silently approaching? Ask yourself, do I feel the light growing in me? Ask yourself, am I losing myself easily in the outward dualities? Let's go to the second quote of Sri Yukteswar. Humanity, so variegated in its own eyes, is seen by a master to be divided only into two classes. Ignorant men who are not seeking God, and wise men who are. So ask yourself, in this period of my life, am I in the ignorant class, not actively seeking God? Or am I in the wise class, seeking Him? Ask yourself, do I see supreme wisdom in my search for God? Third quote of Sri Yukteswar. Keen intelligence is two-edged. It may be used constructively or destructively, like a knife, either to cut out the boil of ignorance or to decapitate oneself. Intelligence is rightly guided only after the mind has acknowledged the inescapability of spiritual law. So ask yourself, am I at this time of my life using my intelligence to cut the boil of my ignorance? Or am I using my intelligence to decapitate myself, spiritually speaking? Ask yourself, am I truly acknowledging the inescapability of spiritual law? Fourth quote, this is from the Holy Science. The heart's natural love is the principal requisite for the attainment of holy salvation. It is impossible for man to advance one step towards the same without it. So ask yourself, right now, during this time of conflict, separation, and confusion, am I developing my heart's natural love? Am I understanding these words? Another quote from Sri Yukteswar. Divine love is without condition, without boundary, and without change. Think of your life and your heart. Think of Sri Yukteswar and analyze yourself. And then change yourself. Change of language.
Now is the moment of the arati. Arati is the ceremony that we use normally, where we use fire. Ceremony in which that symbolizes the light that chases the darkness, that dissolves the darkness. This night we will use more than one element. We will use the 5 cosmic elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Ether meaning space, empty space. These 5 elements represents also the journey of the soul, this descent in matter. And so they also represent the opposite journey that the soul must follow to go back to his own essence. So these 5 cosmic elements are present, of course, also in our own body. Earth corresponds, we find the element of earth in our first chakra. And this element can be there when it's not directed upwards and inwards. Then this element can make us rigid, can make us heavy, dogmatic. But it's also the element that if we use it well, in a yogic way, when we work on ourselves and we try to get the energy in and up, then this element can bring stability in our efforts, perseverance in our spiritual voyage. Then we move up in the second chakra, we find water, which represents fluidity, flow, free flow. And again, when it goes out towards the outer world, then it can be disorderly, chaotic. But again, when that flow is brought under control and brought in, withdrawn inward and upwards, then it can flow with grace. And then the third chakra, which is the fire, which can be aggressive or destructive, and it can also manifest as fanaticism, for example, or as destruction. But again, if it is brought under control and brought in and up, then it can be that fire that burns away our delusions and brings us further up in our journey. Then we get to the element of air, the heart chakra, this deep connection with each form of life. But when it's too much in the outwards oriented and in matter, and then attachments to people or things can go, and then again our job is to bring it in and up, that energy, and find this feeling of deep connection of all forms of life forms. And then we get to the last element, which is ether. And here there is this empty space in which you can really decide what direction go, the final direction. Because if you go out, this can be manifested as a desire to be involved in things of the world. But if it is inward, and then especially if it receives support from the spiritualized other four elements, and they all go up, then especially also then because of the heart, for the altruistic love in the heart, then there is this upward surge that will then through the ether bring us to the point between the eyebrows where we can gain universal vision. And so tonight, through these 5 elements, offering these 5 elements, we will together make this journey from matter to final freedom. And then we use rice as the symbolizes earth, water from the Ganges, the candle for fire, the incense which symbolizes air, and then the bell which represents ether. And let's consider each one of these elements as a stage on our journey towards freedom. And let's bring each part of ourselves at the feet of this great incarnation of wisdom. Narayana, Namo Narayana, Om 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 Namo Narayana. meditate for 1 or 2 minutes on the holy presence of Sri Yukteswar. Meditiamo. Staying inwardly connected with the presence of Swami Sri Yukteswar, let's pray. Thinking of this whole line of great masters through incarnations that date back to the very beginning of the human presence on this earth. Always there have been these great souls. Always have there been these great souls, these saviors, these Christ-like figures who have guided humanity. And eons after eons, yugas after yugas, kalpa after kalpa, these great masters are present in this period through our line of gurus. They have manifested a great modern daily aspect of this eternal truth, this Sanatana Dharma. Babaji Krishna, Jesus Christ, Lahiri Mahasaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints, sages of all traditions and religions, with humility and love, we bow in front of you, we bow before you. Great Master Jnanavatar, Swami Sri Yukteswar, help us in this moment, this historical moment of great confusion, where it is difficult to distinguish between what is truth and that which is false, that which is light and that which is darkness. Great Master, remove this veil, help us understand, make us understand the great drama, the great truth beyond all appearances, and make us choose the right path leading to freedom, leading to evolution and illumination for every soul. Oh, great masters, protect this humanity. Help us, because alone we can't make it. Be with us, now and always. Bring healing, free men from suffering, from ignorance. Beloved Masters, we are your children. To you we offer our lives. Be with us, now and forever. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. And with this light of wisdom and love, Swami Sri Yukteswar, we wish you good night. And we will meet soon again here at Ananda Sisi.